What is the market telling me this week? This is the Nick Rutherford Report, and I am the angry investor. And when the CPI is hot, I get a little angry because Wall Street puts out all these crazy articles that are going to make investors do the absolute wrong thing at the wrong time. And I want you to take advantage of the market. Don't be taken advantage of. So hit that like button, subscribe to this channel, leave me a comment, because this is the place to be for the financial news that matters for your net worth. So if you're an American investor who wants to know what's up, pay attention. Inflation print is hot, according to all of Wall Street and all of the media. Here's a great article. Inflation prints hotter than expected after big Fed rate cut. Oh no, it's time to worry, that's what the pundits are telling you. Well, Wall Street is always trying to take advantage of you, and I want you to take advantage of Wall Street and let's make money. So what's going on here? Well, if we look at the inflation print, well, it's kind of leveling off here, and we're going to get into some data in this that I think is going to be surprising, and I'll tell you what I'm watching and if I'm concerned. But remember, there's always themes and trends going on in the economy, and this is something that I base all of my investing on. I want to know what is the trend so I can take advantage of the trend. And here we had a great article this week. McDonald's CEO warns that 2025 will be another challenging year. So if you're an American investor, or if you're earning income in America, you want to become an American investor so that you can invest in America and the trends in America that are really taking advantage of this economy. I like to invest in America for one specific reason, and that is because I live in America, I buy things in America, and all of my purchases are dominated in US dollars. So it's very easy to focus on the US market, and I think that's very important. Because what some people don't even realize is huge companies like Google, well, they make a lot of money outside of the US. So I don't necessarily need to be diversified by investing in lots of little tiny companies that are outside of the US. And the trends that I'm watching in the macroeconomic environment here are things like this. Well, if the CEO is warning, the McDonald's CEO is warning that 2025 will be another challenging year. What can that tell us? It can tell us that the low segment consumer in the United States is going to be challenged. In fact, the low segment consumer everywhere is going to be challenged because of the inflation over the last few years that hasn't caught up with wages. So what do I want to do? Well, we're going to talk about what I'm going to do as a result of this in just under a minute or two. But first, I want to finish up with looking at some of the other trends. Iran issues a secret warning to all U.S. allies across the Middle East. This is another trend. This is the trend of deglobalization, more conflict, confusing geopolitical things that are happening. This is another reason why I can safely invest. By comparison, I'll use air quotes around safe in the U.S., because if we're friendshoring, if we're onshoring, and there's crazy stuff happening, and if we're building up our military here, well, I can invest in those things that are taking advantage of this trend. And all I'm doing now is reading the articles, looking at the news, looking at the macroeconomic environment to tell me, well, what should I do financially, and are these trends intact? And this trend sure is intact because there's always a lot of spicy conflict going on in the not in that area of the world. I'm stumbling on my words here. So I'm rambling too fast. My point here is I'm just trying to use the right words to make the algorithm show this video to the right people that are people who are investing, and they're in the US. So what's my point in all of this? Well, here we go with a brand new trend that I think is worth paying a lot of attention to. And this is the news that the former Fed trader warns we are this close to another repo crisis. And what does that mean? That means that all over YouTube, all over CNBC, all over the financial news and the market news and the stock news, they're going to be telling you, oh no, there could be another crisis. And guess what? If there's a banking crisis, that's going to mean huge opportunities for investors who are paying attention and for investors who know what to do. You know what? Does this worry me? Not at all. Because as an investor in the United States can print as much money as they want. That's what they did during the last banking crisis. They came together. They did some complicated banking stuff that, frankly, I don't even need to know all the super specifics of it. All I know is they said, well, here is a giant loan facility to fix all of your banking problems. And then we had one or two small little banking problems, but there was no systemic risk to anything. And personally, as of right now, I don't think there's going to be any systemic risk, because if there is some sort of problem within the banking system, they've already shown us that they're going to print a lot of money and just fix the problem. So all that's going to do is potentially cause a short little panic that gives investors fantastic investing opportunities because someone else is scared, or because some algorithm is picking up the news articles and they're selling off stock. Now, of course, when this happens, it could be something that I'm not anticipating, and the facts could change, and it could be not a buying opportunity, but we're going to have to wait and see. All I'm saying is the market is telling me to pay attention to this because it could potentially be a huge opportunity if it comes along. We're going to have to wait and see. And if you want to become an investor who's taking advantage of this, just going to have to wait and see. And here's another stat that came out this week. The core producer price inflation is hotter than expected. Food costs soar. Hold on a second. Let's look very closely at this graph. If I look at this graph here all the way on the right, it's kind of at a similar level before the plague, before all that craziness, before all the inflation. So yeah, we're having some inflation, but inflation is baked into the cake, and there's lots of ways to invest to take advantage of inflation. So I'm not too worried about this stat. And as we wrap this video up, the market is going to tell me exactly what to do, and I'm going to show you exactly where I'm looking. And that's why in the middle we always say, what happens next? And what am I doing about it? Well, I'm going to look at the data. There's lots of people worried about this inflation print. So let's go over to Trueflation.com. Allegedly, they are picking up tons of data points and using big data to tell us what the inflation is. And here is just their graph showing us that since the plague, inflation has compounded at 25.96%. And if you look at it here on the top of the graph, I don't know if it's capturing my cursor or not, since May through today is all the way into October. So months and months and months, inflation has been completely flat. Hasn't really gone up. So what's actually happening here? I don't know. Let's look at another piece of data. Well, let's look at this. This is my favorite metric. Inflation adjusted crude oil prices. I should say my favorite metric in relationship to inflation. How is oil? What is the price of oil? Because oil drives everything. And that's one of the reasons we had massive inflation before. We had all that money printing. We had the handouts, the government stimulus. We had the government spending. And we had the war that pushed up the price of oil. And if we look at the price of oil here, it's directly in its average channel. It doesn't look like it's heading up dramatically. Of course, next week, it could start heading up dramatically. It could go sideways. It could go down. But right now, it's not heading up dramatically. Let me even zoom in here just to the last 3 years. Let's see if I can get the good picture of the graph here. And it looks perfectly centered on the screen here for everyone to see. You can see that over the last 3 years, since the war in Ukraine, there is just oil bouncing around. In fact, we're at the bottom of the channel. So if the economy is going to continue on and slowly grow or sideways grow, well, maybe oil can be up here at inflation adjusted between 90 and 70. Who knows? I don't know. I don't need to know. All I know is based on these stats, I have no reason to say, oh no, inflation, oh my God, it's time to freak out. Well, if I look at the stats, the macroeconomic picture is, well, this is a big nothing burger as of this week. So, of course, you're seeing the headlines, but that is just Wall Street trying to take advantage of you. Now, of course, some new information could come out, and I could change my mind. And when I do that, well, hit that like button, subscribe to this channel, and you'll see what I see. because the market will tell us what to do. Now, of course, we're going to get lots of good opportunities coming up. And if you want to know exactly my number one stock pick, go get on my email newsletter list, and that is at rutherfordwealthreport.com. I'll put it in the description of this video. I'm going to send out my number one stock prediction for 2025 that's taking advantage of all these trends. Now let's zoom over to the market to tell us what the market is exactly telling me. What's the market telling me? Well, the S&P 500 is at all-time highs, so I'm not worried about inflation. In fact, let's look at the last 5 days with this new dramatic print. Inflation's up. Oh my God. You know what? The stock market is up 1.5% over that time. Let me just make sure it's coming through. It's coming through perfectly fine on the video. Can you see that stat? I can see this stat. And this is why I get angry at Wall Street and they call me the angry investor, because the news media tells you like the dumbest thing. And it just causes investors to panic and do the wrong thing. And if I look at this chart is telling me everything is great. And let's continue. Well, gold, that's another trend that I've been talking about for years now. It seems like it's consolidating sideways or going up. And there are a lot of reasons for that. I can get into a longer section on that in another video, but I'm just checking the market here, and the market is telling me, well, we're not having a recession. Maybe we're having some inflation. Maybe gold is foretelling the future, because some people like to say that gold can tell the future. So maybe the consensus is we're going to have more inflation and more problems in the future. So that's one of the reasons that I'm invested a percentage of my portfolio in gold and in gold miners, but only when they're super cheap. So I research to see if they're super cheap, and I read all the reports, and then I find them. Then I share them with people who are in my super investor group. But what I'm looking at right now here is, well, gold is kind of going up. Bitcoin is consolidating sideways. So all of these big fears of recession was a problem, inflation is a problem. Maybe it's a problem, maybe it isn't. But what I'm looking at here is that then I'm going to just invest in things that are going to protect me if this happens at the right time. But the biggest economic news came out of TSMC this week. This is important for every single investor because, well, the digital transformation, AI, insert your favorite buzzword, well, it's taking us higher. It's taking us onward. And you know why? Because the orders for TSMC came out, and this makes me bullish. We're up 39.6% revenue on the year-on-year change. So I'm going to bring this up again because the data is telling me what to do. And the data is telling me we're expanding and we're building more and more chips like crazy. 39% more chips are going out to all the people who like chips. My great analogy for this is TSMC is selling the picks and shovels for the gold rush. So I don't care who wins. I just know people want a lot of picks and shovels. They want a lot of chips. And that probably means NVIDIA is going to do good. And they're going to sell more and more AI chips. We don't even need to know the specifics. We just need to know that more is happening. And you don't need to be a computer scientist or an AI scientist to capitalize on these trends. Just look at the stock chart. It looks like NVIDIA is about to break out to all-time new highs. And this is the most important metric because this is telling me the AI revolution is on. Everyone's buying more and more chips. They're optimizing their stuff. And you know what? For all the people who say AI is not a big thing, guess what? We're going to have robo-taxis soon. We're going to have all of the Mag 7. They're using AI to serve up better ads. And if their customers have a better experience on Facebook and Google because the ads are more targeted, guess what? Google's going to make more money. People are going to be more happy. They're going to spend more money. And the advertisers are going to spend more money because they're going to get more customers and more people are going to have more money. And they're going to spend more and more money. And the economy is going to expand and expand because people are spending more money. This is like the most obvious thing in the world when you read the data. Now, of course, I want to say a huge warning here. The data could change and then I could be selling. But right now, based on all of this financial news, all the financial data, all of the investments, it looks like the U.S. economy is expanding. And there are a lot of chips being bought. So this tells me it's just going to expand and expand. So stick around, hit that like button, leave me a comment, let me know what you're investing in, what trends you're seeing, and what you're thinking, because the more comments, the more likes I get, the more subscriptions I get. Smash that subscribe button too. Well, that's going to make this channel grow. It's going to allow me to put up more and more videos and analyze everything. But my point of all of this is there's more chips. The economy is going to expand right now based on that. If new data comes in next week, I'll change my mind. But right now, the data is telling me to be bullish. I'll give you the best stock to invest in right now. Just go to highreturnlowrisk.com.